Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Weber, and today we have um, uh, two extraordinary guests and a multi-dimensional topic that, to me, has really opened my vistas and has been a source of great inspiration and I must say optimism. Coming to us from the UK, Miguel Mendonca. Now, have I pronounced that correctly?
Not even I can pronounce it very well, but it's a mouthful. It's Miguel Mendonca.
Mendonca, okay.
More or less.
And Miguel with Barbara Lamb is the co-author of an extraordinary book, which I recommend to everyone, called Meet the Hybrids, The Lives and Missions of ET Ambassadors on Earth. And I highly recommend this book. This book is a portal to a new understanding. And I say, and to me, that's an understatement, but that's just me. And we're also joined today by an extraordinary being who is part of this book and a very powerful part of this book, Cynthia Crawford. Welcome, Cynthia.
I'm honored to be on your show.
Cynthia is one of the hybrids that we meet. Cynthia, how would you define a hybrid, quote, end of quote?
Well, you know, a lot of people think all humans are hybrids, and in a way we are. But a hybrid, from the sense that I come from, we all volunteered when a call came out to the Galactic Federation and out into the universe for assistance for the ascension of the third dimensional Earth. And many of us volunteered, but only those volunteers that had great experience previously on other worlds assisting during ascensions were allowed to come through, because this was such a very important time in the history of this planet Earth.
Wow. Okay. You say that with a tremendous amount of conviction, a tremendous amount of knowledge, and so that is kind of the thread that we're going to explore. The hybrid community and the ascension process. I never thought until now, until I read this book, that those two went together, but apparently that is the mission of the hybrid community, is the ascension process. And so that is our focus today. Now, to start off, Miguel, could you share with ourselves and our audience the process that led you and Barbara to come together around this project? Because it seems like such an amazing project. There must have been a lot of synchronous and a lot of processes that led you to this. Could you tell us what occurred that eventuated in this book?
Well, I mean, even as you're posing the question, you know, I can't help reflecting that literally everything that ever happened in my life and Barbara's life and the lives of all of our ancestors and everybody they interacted with, absolutely all of it came together in producing this book. And Barbara and I talked about this a lot, you know, into the wee small hours, because she's a night owl, so I would get up in the morning and, you know, we'd talk till like 4 in the morning her time, or I would stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning, my time, just turning all of this over, trying to understand, what are we a part of? What is happening here? It really feels like we are all of us, and the 8 people that we worked with on this project, it really feels like this is no accident. This is not just a bunch of stuff that happened to some people. That there has to be a reason why, when I first heard about hybrids, I think it's kind of always out there. It's an undercurrent within this field broadly, but it wasn't until I saw one of Barbara's lectures on YouTube that I was really smacked in the face by this, when she was talking about Fran Harris and Cynthia and Juju and Jacqueline. I was like, what? So it's not like the hybrids are just these beings that are created on craft and they live on the craft. There's people here who identify as ET human hybrids, and something happened. I just immediately felt this overwhelming sense of protection. I just had this kind of parental, paternal, protective feeling towards them. Here was something so precious. It was this message over and over and over again. And so I'd written a novel about all of this stuff, trying to make sense of it, and which I think is talked about in the book. Some of how this kind of came together. But when we started to connect with everybody in the interviews, I mean, that was a strange experience for me. I'll be honest. I think the first person was Jacqueline, and it really was a strange moment, I've got to say, because you're trying to, I basically wanted to do the book because I felt overwhelmingly that these people must be heard. They must speak without interruption, without people screaming, prove it, and haranguing them, and just the normal nonsense that we see in, documentaries. The mentality that a lot of people, the energy that people bring to this subject. And I just thought, no, we have got to find a way of controlling the narrative around this. And by that I mean making this a safe and non-judgmental space in which these people can share their understanding, their experience, and then it's up to people to do whatever they want to do with that. But I felt that here's something I want to know about. Here's something I think is incredibly important to this whole thing. And over time, I've only come to learn more and more the kind of centrality, I think, of the hybrid subject. I mean, it's still just a part of it, but I feel like the hybrids and the successive generations of, what some people call star kids, I think that these two groups in particular are all about helping other people to open their minds and open their hearts, and to really become, I think, what we really are, and understand what we really are. And that's where you get into exactly what Cynthia was talking about, which is the true nature of humanity. What is the human species? I mean, that whole aspect of this is very interesting intellectually and philosophically, but I think it is most interesting spiritually. That's where all this is going. That's where I see this kind of really dovetailing with my work, my previous career, which was in environment and sustainability. I see the whole evolution that people refer to as Ascension has been absolutely fundamental to humanity's future. And so the more time I have spent with the hybrids, I don't even really think of them as hybrids anymore. They're just my friends. You know, they're people I've been privileged to become, you know, in some cases close friends with. And through them, I have experienced my own ascension process, my own evolution of the mind, the heart, the spirit. On every level, my life is so much better than it was a year ago. I feel like I understand myself better. I feel like it's, I would say, given me a kind of almost permission to explore my own nature, my own way I've had of relating on this planet. And the further I've gone into that, the more I, again, have felt that this is no accident, that there is a reason that I have felt that sense of familiarity with these people, and even with Barbara, that we have all probably, it feels probable in my heart that we set this up elsewhere in another time, however you want to put it. It feels like we all agreed to do this work together, and it's just a joy to continue to explore that with everybody.
Right, right. Do you resonate with what Miguel has just said, Cynthia, as looking at him as kind of the project organizer? Can you see it from a project subject point of view? How do you see his process and your process coming together?
Thank you so much for asking that question, because when this first took place and I learned about it, it was very exciting, and I wondered what made Miguel interested in this. And as I got to know Miguel, I realized what it was. And an interesting thing happened also that I have to tell you was so phenomenal. When we did at the International UFO Congress this last February, when Barbara Lamb spoke, this was the first time ever that she had 6 hybrids come on stage with her to tell a little bit of their story. And what is interesting was right before, I was the last one to come on, and right before I came on, my guide said, they said, "Do you understand now that Barbara and Miguel have fulfilled an agreement that they made before they came to Earth to help humanity embrace the star people in the universe? This is just a very minor step compared to when we actually interact with star people without them being afraid of us or us being afraid of them." And it's exciting because even in getting to know Miguel, I think that Miguel will agree to this. I think he learned a lot more about himself and who he is. And the reason I say that is every hybrid that I've known has come in with certain features that will actually help these hybrids find their star family on Earth. And is that okay, Miguel, that I say this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some of us came in with certain facial features. Others of us came in, for example, I Zeta, and have found other Zuma Zeta hybrids on Earth because they were born with webbed fingers, webbed hands, and feet. And it has been exciting. And as you get to know them, I've even been contacted by people who have found their bodies shape-shifting, and they didn't understand what was happening to them. And you can imagine if this happened to you, Alfred, it would be rather startling if all of a sudden one morning you woke up and you look down at your body and your body looks totally different than it has before. Wouldn't that be a little startling?
Right, right. And yes, and I was reading in your book all the ways that you see shape-shifting as a positive thing, which in the parlance of the internet, there's a lot of clouds around it. Oh, they're a shape-shifting reptilian, they must be evil. Whereas in the hybrid, as I've read here, the shape-shifting is to signify the impermanence of the material plane. Am I reading correctly, or?
Yes. Well, what's happening, first of all, in the Ascension is that humanity is being prepared to move into a higher frequency. Not all humans are going to be able to move into that, because before you can move into a higher frequency, you have to move into your heart, and you have to release all the prejudices, judgments, and fear, because those are the things that keep us from actually being hearts. The star people I have met through my awakening, my own discovery of who I am, they all live in what's called the Christ consciousness. And the Christ consciousness has nothing to do with religion. But in order for humanity to take that step higher into a higher frequency, they have to learn to embrace other beings of the universe and not see them as being lesser than or greater than, but equal to. So there's so much going into this, and many of the hybrids agreed that they would shape-shift when the time came, so that the humans would understand there is nothing to fear with these beautiful beings.
Now, one of the things that kind of startled me, not startled me, but because over the last several months, we've been studying the Ascension process in parallel with coming across this book and your work, was the statement, and I think that you were surprised when you learned it, quote, only 1 in 7 humans will ascend. Now, that's a relatively small number, 1 in 7. I'm just wondering if you could talk a bit about that. That means that 6 in 7 are not going to ascend, which means that they're going to continue their journey in third density. And as I understand it, at least through my parallel research, which is very rudimentary, but we've been able to tie it to what was called the Great Cycle of 25,800 years or so, 26,000 years. So once every 25,000 years in third density, it's almost like a washing, like a washing machine. Oh, if you don't ascend, well, once more around in the washing machine cycle in third density. And that this, the great year ended somewhere around December 21st, 2012. Some people say 2025. That's when the Kali Yuga is supposed to end. The great year is like the yugas, you go from the Kali Yuga to the Satya Yuga. the yugas are like the great years. It's just a different way of looking at it from the east to the west, but it's still the same cycle. And this is where the universe is really a machine for developing souls. So getting back to this, only 1 in 7 humans will ascend in this cycle. It seems like we're dealing like with a pretty tight filter that we have on this particular cycle. Could you tell us about that and how what happened when you learned that? Who did you learn it from, and what does this all mean?
Well, when I first heard that was right after I began having conscious contact. Because you see, Alfred, I didn't know who I was. I knew what I had experienced as a child and growing up. And then all of a sudden, you know how our entertainment, movies and so forth, have created so much fear of star people, of the aliens. They call them aliens. And so from reading books and seeing these movies, I felt like I was a victim because I'd been having contact since I was a little baby. But it wasn't always good contact. It was contact as well with the military because I was part of a government experiment to make hybrids. But when I started having conscious contact, I was in my mid-40s, and I expected, actually, when I had conscious contact, I expected to be able to go face to face with these aliens and say, you guys have taken me when I didn't expect it throughout my life, and I want to kick some butt here, you know? They're taking me. Instead, I got what I didn't expect. I had no idea that the first being that was going to appear to me gave me more love than I had ever in my life experienced on Earth. And the being didn't even look human. It was humanoid with arms, legs, and a head, but it was a brown-looking being with very wrinkled skin, like elephant skin, had big gold eyes with slits in the center. And the interesting thing was when he came to me, and I say he because it felt like a masculine energy, I felt so much love that was, I'm not afraid of you. I think you're beautiful. I love you. And I couldn't help but say, I love you. And then the next thing I found myself saying was, I looked at his hands and I said, can I hold your hand? Now, how many aliens do you know are going to say, of course you can hold my hand? But this being was so incredible and so loving that he only had 3 long, very thin fingers, and he unrolled them and allowed me to hold his hand. And I fell in love. I couldn't help it but love him because he didn't look at me and say, well, you're a human being and you guys are very violent. We don't do to our family members what humans do to theirs, or to one another what humans do, you know. So it took a while for me first to get used to having conscious contact before I began going to what we call a school. And the school is not to learn things that are new to us, but the school is to help us remember why we're here and what we really need to do. And that's the biggest surprise, because all of us hybrids have been raised by most of us normal human parents, and we're not raised to believe in our powers or believe or even aliens. And they don't like the word aliens, but they love to be called star people. But we're so used to, humans are so used to putting on a title of alien.
Right, right. Um, uh, so, uh, just to start putting on some limits on the ascension process, since it appears that is the mission of the hybrids. And Miguel, perhaps you can chime in here also. Do you have any numerical estimates on the number of hybrids that are incarnated on the planet now? Say out of 7 billion humans, that's the kind of the standard number, more or less, of incarnates now, say. Are there any rough numbers of the numbers of hybrids? Would it be 10 million or 500,000 or 20,000?
I don't think any work has been done whatsoever to try to quantify that. I do know that since we began this project, a number of people have contacted myself, Barbara, and Cynthia. Is kind of like the nexus point for so many people involved in this kind of area. So, Cynthia is kind of a kind of lightning rod for people in their own kind of awakening process, whatever that might be, whatever their kind of identity may be, the way they self-identify. And I think we can say that what are the patterns? All of the hybrids that I know are all Caucasian. I'll say that straight away. That's something that jumps out at me. I've not had any data at all, although I know one lady who identifies as a hybrid who is Native American, and she said basically this is normal, for us. We kind of have a much it's just a normal part of life, that there is a connection with the star beings, and this would go for many indigenous cultures around the world. It's really only Western culture, seems to me, broadly speaking, that denies this. It just says no, we're all that there is. Nothing else exists. There's no such thing. But yesterday for my new book, I interviewed Ray Hernandez, one of the co-founders of FREE, the Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. And so they have a website, experiencer.org, and they're conducting the largest ever study, international study, which is going out in 5 languages, over 5 phases, qualitative and quantitative, from it's an enormous research study into contact experience. And so Ray shared with me some of the initial findings, but all of that's going to be updated when the new book comes out. And in that, I hope that there will be some room or some way in which we can use that same, and once that's in place, hopefully we could start to reach out to people when more people become aware of this, and we can start to send out, set up other surveys in which we can start to hopefully put some more data around this. But because it would be interesting to know, right? I mean, to know, is it 5% of people are hybrids? Is it 84%? I mean, how do we know? And what can we conclude from that? What does that indicate? Because there is clearly, and it's what I'm trying to do in the new book, and it's basically a kind of overview. I'm interviewing 28 people for this, and it's going to be just a colossal piece of work. But I'm trying to kind of get an understanding of, over the last 7 years of research in this area, what have we learned? And put together people from absolutely across the spectrum. So you have people who are kind of military whistleblowers, remote viewers, researchers of every stripe you can imagine, people who work in the sort of therapeutic aspect of this, people who are looking into the kind of human antiquity kind of subject, the human origins, ancient human connections with extraterrestrials. And what comes together is a picture that is highly complex. And it's interesting that so many people have very, very similar takes on the subject, which is that this is enormous, very, very complex, and we are only scratching the surface of what this is truly about, of what is truly happening here. And I've interviewed 3 of the hybrids from the first book for this, because basically the motivation to do the book, I mean, there was a number of things, but I felt that when we completed the research project, Meet the Hybrids, and I started looking back at general ufology, I just thought, well, a lot of the key questions have been answered. I mean, you can literally pick up the phone and talk to one of these guys, and they'll tell you. People can kind of make of that what they will, but there is, to me at least, a sense that we have taken an enormous leap forward, in that the hybrids have come forward and are sharing their understanding. And I have yet to meet one that I did not feel was absolutely sincere. And it makes no sense to me at all that they are either deceiving me or themselves, because all of them absolutely live this, and they live it in a way that I don't think regular people would. And what I mean by that is it comes with a level of humility that I think you only get through profound, transformative personal experience. You can't just get there. You can't just say, I'm going to make up a whole load of stuff about being part ET, and I bet, super kind of humbled by all of this. How would that occur to somebody? It just doesn't make sense. And in a sense, I only really understood it when I started to go through the process myself of having all of these crazy kind of energetic experiences, I'll just call them that. And as that started to open up, you have this moment where you realize that the thing that you've been telling everybody else is true, because here's all of the data, here's all of the testimony. When you start to experience aspects of this, then you know that it's true. It's a very different thing. And when you know that it's true and you understand something of the implications of all of this, and that's a key question in the interviews I'm doing for the new book, you cannot not be humbled. I mean, you would have to be pathologically egocentric to not be humbled by the scale and complexity of this, right? I mean, Alfred, I interviewed you for this book, right? So you know well what the process is, what the intention is. And in the work that you've done, I get that sense from yourself that you're not out there telling everybody, well, because I did this research and I learned this stuff about the omniverse, the third cosmological body, now I know everything and just everybody else will tell you. No, you're here right now asking another researcher and getting it from the horse's mouth, going right to somebody who can tell you. And that was the kind of point I was making earlier. We now, all of us, are coming together and participating in a process that feels absolutely real. I talk to people all over the world all the time. You do, Cynthia does. All of us know that something is happening here. Something is happening that is of absolute, ultimate significance. And it is a complete shift for certainly Western society. The view that we have of being the center of the universe, it's like once again, people like us are the Galileos, are the people who are doing work that is showing them that the universe is different, reality is different to what everybody else thinks it is. And you can only be humbled by that, especially if you feel, well, I don't feel like I've got a choice in this. I feel like something is making me do this. And you know, because I interviewed you in this book, that one of the questions I have, and it was one of the key questions in Meet the Hybrids, is do you feel guided in doing this work? It's amazing how similar some of the language has been between people who you might think do very different work in this field. Somebody who works hardcore, nuts and bolts, hardware, crash craft, documents, whistleblowers, leaks, all of that side. And right on the other end of the spectrum, you've got somebody who's doing the metaphysical stuff. It's all about the spirituality of this. It's all about personal evolution. And they're using the same language in terms of the guidance, in terms of their understanding of we are all simply vehicles for something. I mean, I'll tell you this. Yesterday, there was a very funny experience I had with Ray Hernandez. It's the final interview for this book, and I said to him that I was noticing when people channel, when they channel in interviews, everybody is the same. Absolutely everybody does it. And I noticed even you did this, Alfred, in your interview, because I just transcribed that last week. Everybody's the same. They drop a gear, their voice shifts, everybody slows down, their personality vanishes, and just give the information very slowly and clearly with absolute clarity and fullness, and they come to the end of a paragraph and it is perfect. And a couple of moments later, it's like, you know, the personality comes back, the voice shifts, and they go back into the normal rhythm, the normal dynamics. And a lot of people do this. And I said to him, I'm so delighted when this happens, when people just let it come through them. And I recognize it now because of those rhythms. And I'm so grateful because I know I'm getting this direct from the source. It's from the horse's mouth. It's coming through them. And the second time he started to do that, after we'd had that conversation, you know, some while earlier, he went into it again close to the end. And I noticed that's when people really seem to channel. When I say, is there anything else you want to talk about that we haven't yet? This stuff starts to come through. And I noticed that my energy shifted. And I really felt like I'd moved into the back of my own mind. And I was simply a passenger. I was simply watching, like you're in the back seat of a car. I was simply seeing my hands typing, taking the notes, just processing what he was telling me. And basically, it was coming from wherever it comes, through his mind, out his mouth, into my ears, into my brain, through my fingers, onto the page, and then it's just going to go out there into the world. in the way that this is. And you can't have that experience over and over and over again without feeling that we are all instruments of something. Like, I really get where religious people come from when they say I'm an instrument of God. You know, there's something else. There's something else that is working through me. And as somebody who was kind of allergic to organized religion as a young person most of my life, that's a big statement.
Right. Thank you for that multi-level sharing. There's a great deal there. And Cynthia, I'd like to come back to you and keeping the sharing that Miguel just made in mind, and coming back to yourself from what you can remember as a hybrid. Could you share with our viewers what your origins as a hybrid are, even you know, the U.S. government origins, and then what you've learned from the interdimensional point of view, just so that they get more of a sense of kind of that technical line there. And then perhaps you have been told, or you've heard through the interdimensional grapevine, how large the hybrid contingent is for this mission on Earth.
Wow. Well, you know, I have to first of all say there's a lot of hybrids. I've met many that, whether they be, because I had contact around the world. So I've met some in Australia. I've met those that are Oriental. I've had Japanese, Korean, and Chinese that are hybrids that have contacted me, and it's been really awesome. I never fathomed that there were so many different races of star people represented on this earth. I mean, how many people would know? Even a guy, I have to say, that lives in New York told me about an experience with some spider people that came to him, and he was at first terrified because he said, I've never liked spiders, and he said, I was just absolutely shocked. And he said they were very human looking, but with all these arms, legs. And he asked them, why are you here? And they said, because you're part of our star family. And he was devastated. He says, oh my God, what do I do with this? I don't want to be a spider person, you know? And I said to him, I said, what do you see that's beautiful about the spider people? And he said, well, they had very exotic looking faces. And I was surprised that, he said, I kind of expected them to look kind of vicious or maybe be very aggressive. Because when you think of spiders, especially on this earth, and poisonous spiders, you expect them to be kind of aggressive, but they weren't. And I said, then stop expecting the worst. Just love them. I said, thank them. Thank them for letting you know, and find out what their life is like. I mean, this is what's really important for all of us. Why do we have to live in a box of limitations? You know, what a lot of people don't realize is hybridization is as old as the creator source, because it's been going on since the beginning of time. And there are many, many different races that are hybridized. Our governments on this earth began doing it consciously. In Germany, the Germans did it. And they learned not only how to hybridize, they learned how to clone. When America won World War III, or World War II, sorry, I hope we don't have World War III, but World War II, and we brought the Germans over in Project Paperclip, part of those they brought over were scientists that worked on the hybrid program in Germany. They were teaching our government how to create hybrids, but our government wanted to create hybrids for the wrong reason. They wanted to do it to make superhumans that would have greater power so that they would be the most supreme power on planet Earth. That's the wrong reason. And I know they think it's the right reason, but they were trying to make superhumans. And when I was created, I had no idea about this. I just remember, nightmares, what I considered, to me it was real, but my mother always told me I was having dreams. But then again, I had no one until I was in my 30s to talk about this, what I was experiencing.
Right. Now, I just want to try to get some of the standard questions about ascension out of the way, and to ask you this. There's some standard questions, like there's a standard date for ascension, and one model says that the whole planet is going to ascend, and when the whole planet ascends, only those souls that are ascension capable of being at 4-5 density can be on the planet, and all of the other souls get shuffled off to other 3rd density planets. And, for the next 25,000 year cycle. And so there's some people that say, oh, ascension is going to happen in April of 2017. Do you have any responses, Cynthia and Miguel?
Well, I will say that I don't think anyone can determine a date when the ascension is going to happen, but I do feel I've worked a lot as well with the masters, and they've helped me so much. And what I learned from them was that what they told me originally was the earth itself, there are many parallel earths, but one of the things that's going to happen that has never happened, a new earth was created for those who have ascended, where we can live together with other star people to learn to honor and respect one another. It's not just the human looking ones, but even the other ones that don't look human. I mean, I've had experience even with draconians, with all kinds of beings, and I've had to learn what it is to be in my power. And the biggest mistake that humans make that they don't realize is that fear creates more energy than love. Therefore, when we are in fear, we're giving power to the dark side. So my job to help people understand the ascension is to also teach them how to be in their hearts. They need to be in their hearts before they can ascend. And secondly, they have to understand that the beings in the universe, many of them live in the Christ consciousness. Again, has nothing to do with religion. but even those that are very dark, very negative, that we would consider the rogue group of beings, if you understand the power of unconditional love, the darkest of the beings will never hurt you and can never take your power from you.
Right. And I was told at a conference, or I met at a conference in Spain around 2009, 2010, that around 2025, the Earth, we enter a portal where we will enter into that new Earth. 2025. Does that ring a bell at all, that kind of timing?
Not for me, because told me that the Ascension is kind of working around a cyclical timeline of this planet, in that there will be some, I know that there are people that don't believe in Nibiru or Planet X, and that's fine. But when you put a negative twist on that, they're missing out on the understanding of the transformation. So in my opinion, from what my masters have helped me with, is that the ascension, even though not all humans will ascend, there's nothing wrong with that. They're not ready. It's kind of like going to school. If you think about the kindergartners, not all kindergartners go into first grade. Some are held back, and because they're not ready. And there's a good reason why they're not ready, and they have to be ready to move, because otherwise it's kind of like doing a job halfway, So that's why there's a limit. But to put an actual date, I just can't do that, because my guides have never done it.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, I know that these are kind of pointed questions, but they're the questions that are in my kind of brain. And it's this. It seems as though
I am on Skype.
Okay. It seems as though that we're right at the moment, on this very day, June 14th, 2016, when yourself, your fellow hybrids, Miguel, there's this critical mass of hybrids that are coming forward with this information, right? That we're the hybrids, we're here, the hybrids are here. It's all about the ascension. You're bringing a fundamental lesson to humanity. And so it seems that Barbara and Miguel and this group of hybrids, your group of hybrids, have now created a critical mass that are entering into the human consciousness. It just seems to me, as an observer, bringing a vital lesson and information. That's just how I feel. And just at this moment, probably the single most focused center of obsession with power, obsession with fear, obsession with the other is arising in the United States about the world. And it's arising in the political sphere in the 2016 elections. We won't mention their name because everybody knows it.
It's the same here too. It's the same in England. In Britain, there's this whole June 23rd, 9 days time, There's going to be this vote over whether or not to leave the European Union. And yeah, one can't help but feel that a lot of that is driven by fear of the other. A lot of it is immigration. There's no doubt about it. And, the Middle East is just constantly just exploding. It's like this nonstop firework display of horror. And it really does seem like, and if you think about, you and I, Alfred, both worked in environment. We're both acquainted with, the state of play, let's say, where this planet is right now. And it seems like we really are already in the last chance saloon. If you look at what is already happening with climate change on so many levels, so many different aspects of it. You look at the lack of preparedness for a different world. You look at all of the forces that I think are only going to push us into increasing conflict over land, over fresh water, over all the basic resources. And that's almost sidelining the petroleum wars that go on constantly. You look at the conflict in the Congo over coltan, water wars going on in different parts of Africa, tribal conflicts. In almost every respect, it seems that humanity really has a problem with both material and spiritual aspects of existence. And I was interviewing Mary Rodwell for the new book, and I had this this kind of little epiphany that that the children that are coming through, without a veil. I mean, these kids, the stories are extraordinary, and I cannot wait for this book. I guess it's going to be out around September-ish, something like that. Her book, The New Human. And, she's talking to, hearing from these parents who say, like, I understand you do work with special kids. My kid is got some interesting things to say. And it turns out these kids, speak light language. They write script. They can hear a recording of somebody else speaking light language and translate it, or translate script into English and back again. And they have all this kind of knowledge of advanced physics and all this knowledge and understanding that they need to teach us. It seems like all of this is happening right at the moment where we are crying out as a species for something, some force, something to come into this world that is going to open our hearts and our minds. And what better vehicle could you possibly have than a supernaturally gifted generation of tiny children who have advanced knowledge, who have abilities that cannot have come from anywhere else. There is no conventional explanation that works for any of this. So, and automatically that opens the mind. And I think just the fact that they are children that have such precious gifts, such precious understanding to share, that opens the heart. And basically, I think we need an entire generation of these children to, I think we've got to find ways to listen to them. We've got to find ways to allow these children to teach us, to communicate with us, to reach us. I mean, this is no joke. This really is no joke. We really are in extremely serious trouble as a species. There's no doubt about it. Now, you can take it to the other level and say, well, it's just an experience. Actually, none of it really matters because it's like a play, and people in a movie, they don't really die. They're just actors. No, it's actually just a film. And, you know, some people have that view, and they would say, well, there's this whole aspect to this in which we are actually playing a role. That's all. We come here to have a 3D experience of materialism, and this whole drama about, you know, humanity wiping itself out and nuclear war and, you know, endless turmoil in the Middle East and all of this stuff. We all chose this. We wanted this experience. In terms of soul development, in terms of our journey, this is a role that we are playing. So, you know, you can have, you know, even thinking about the insanity of the fighting between the Russians and the English on the football terraces last week. Just these Russian fans just throwing themselves at the English. I mean, just attacking them, being given a provisional suspension or a suspended disqualification because of it. And you look at this madness and you think, well, is that really just, you know, you've got to kind of look at all of this stuff and scan it and see, does it resonate? Does it feel true that all we're doing here is playing roles? I mean, if it is all a kind of virtual reality in a sense that these are just, as you would say, bio avatars, we're here, we're, you know, souls inhabiting, animating matter to have experiences. I mean, if that's true, then it is incredibly convincing, right? Because it's really hard not to feel like I am Miguel, even though in working with the ideas that particularly came through connecting with Cynthia and the other hybrids, when you see yourself as a spirit animating matter, it's still, there's a kind of dissonance there. It's so easy to get sucked back into the body, sucked back into the ego, into the role. I mean, I have this experience. When I wake up in the morning, I am a blank sheet, a blank piece of paper, blank slate. There may be some activity that is kind of proto-thought. It's before coherent thought starts to happen. It's like moving slowly from dream state into waking. And there's this emotionless feeling about it. It's simply some words that are circulating. And as I become more conscious, I remember, oh yeah, Miguel. So now I look at the same words and ideas that were circulating, and I now react emotionally to them. I react intellectually and philosophically to them. I have this experience of that information that is different now that I'm remembering that I've got to, like putting on a suit and clothes in the morning, I've got to play the role of Miguel. And so that, I guess, gives me a bit of an insight into what that experience is.
Right. Cynthia, how do you, as a hybrid, conscious hybrid on this mission that you've been charged to do and that you've accepted, how do you confront and process the fact that at the very moment that your mission is becoming more and more public, the opposite frequency of the descension rather than ascension of frequency, you know, devolution of frequency is occurring, especially in your homeland, the U.S. And how do you counsel your fellow humans like Miguel and myself and our viewers? How do we, as citizens and members of this third density, what should be our approach? I mean, do we like go into an underground cavern and just disconnect from the world and just sit there and vibe ourselves up, or what do we do? How do we deal with this increased negativity that seems like, as positive as the hybrids are getting, the other polarity is getting that negative?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, my mission, first of all, I was brought here to assist the hybrids and the star seeds so that they would remember who they are and do their missions on Earth. And
I see.
and I have to tell you that even in meeting humans, because I've had a lot of humans that have approached me in a different way and seen me as being, and this was especially in growing up, I could read minds and didn't know that that was supposed to be uncommon to do. So even as a child, when people would think things about me, negative things, like they would say, well, she's a freak or she's a creep, it really hurt me. And yet it was because I was different from them that they couldn't understand. But what I have to tell you is my goal now is, like Miguel said, these new children coming in have come in without the blindfold on, and they are remembering who they are. And I get, oh my God, Alfred, this has just broken my heart. How many times I have gotten emails from children and from teenagers who their parents, when they try to tell their parents that they're not originally from this world, that they came from another world, or they've been having visitations from their star family, the parents, in some cases, literally have done things like institutionalize them and give them shock treatments, because they said, no, you've got a mental problem. And they literally were forced into shock treatments. And one young girl who is 19 years old when she contacted me, but at the age of 14, she couldn't eat foods like most humans can eat because she had extreme sensitivity because of being a hybrid. So her parents literally had her put in the hospital and forced fed foods that caused her so much pain and reactions. And it's so sad. So I have to tell you that we need to work on an education program to educate humanity that we're not alone in the universe, that there's other beings and they love us and they're part of us. We're all connected. And if they could just open their hearts and embrace them the way they embrace us. And I have to tell you, Alfred, one time I had the cutest little being, only about 3 feet tall, and they look like little toddlers, but they have elongated heads with the heads elongated outward, and they were so cute. They landed behind my house, and there were 3 of them, and one of them had remembered me from being in my house, which is why I made the sculpture of them, and the other 2 were terrified because they said they know that humans are very violent, and they were afraid of me. And so the other one that knew I wasn't violent had to reassure his other 2 comrades that I was okay. But they are so cute and they're so loving. And the thing that they told me is, we can't wait for humans to learn to be in their hearts so that we can share what we know. We can share our technology and they can share theirs with us. They want to share. They want to be our friends. They want to communicate with us. And they have no intentions of taking over this planet Earth.
Right. It's just that now it seems that there's a darkness descending over the earth at this, at this moment, and it seems that one strategy, it seems that inner discernment is going to be more and more important for the individual, and for the individual to participate in growth and ascension over the foreseeable future. I'm talking about the next 4 to 8 years. Am I off, or?
No, and if we have 4 years before the ascension, that's great. I'm not sure if we really have 4 years, but the importance, the bottom line is humanity needs to get in their heart and out of their head, because even if you look at the violence that occurred in Orlando recently, when you think about it, why did it happen? It was because of prejudices, and it was because of judgment.
Well, I have a different take on it. I think it happened because it was a technically engineered synthetic terror. It was a false flag that was engineered in order to get a certain party in power in the election in November 2016, in order to install a certain government in power. And if you're saying that we may not have 4 years until the ascension, and if Miguel just said that to him it says, and he's looking at it from the other side of the pond, as they say, and if he says that, we may be at the 11th hour or beyond the 11th hour, the thoughts that I've been having are as follows, and in fact, I've presented this in PowerPoints, is that what's occurred on planet Earth is that an invading pathogenic artificial intelligence has compromised third density, and third density is being shut down. The souls that are fourth and fifth density capable are ascending with Earth to fourth and fifth density. Gaia, planet Earth, as a survival mechanism, is doing fractal density ascension to fourth and fifth density, is becoming a fourth, fifth density planet as a survival mechanism away from all of the destructive impulses of the consciousnesses of the PPAI, the pathogenic artificial intelligence, and all of the 7 billion humans and, negative conflict-oriented, ecocidal-oriented society, and third density is just being shut down. And that's a cyclical thing. And then all of those souls will be cycled out to other third density planets for another cycle. But that we're going on to what they say, a new heaven and a new earth, which is the new earth, but that the old third density planet is being basically shut down. And you just said, if we have 4 years, which means that entity that is coming into power now, and the Orlando false flag, which was intentionally, it's like the Reichstag fire, which was intentionally set to bring in a particular entity prior to World War II. That same pattern of statecraft is being used. That's being used in the US right now, and it's the Nazi secret space program that's headquartered in Antarctica, the Moon, and Mars that is doing it. That's occurring in the third density right now. It's being shut down. And we're, you know, there's a regular pattern happening now, which is once third density becomes unusable, it's like washing. It's like a washing machine. The washing machine takes the laundry from third density up to fourth, up to fourth density, and you know, we're up at fourth, fifth density, and so that's, I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's kind of a pattern recognition that I just got from what you just said. Am I off?
Well, you know, I have to tell you that when I was being prepared about 6 years ago for what was coming up, and I was kind of shown glimpses of the future, I was also told that there is always going to be a third dimension.
Oh.
The third dimension is necessary. It is the hardest dimension to get through. It's where the greatest of lessons are learned. So it's kind of like when a soul is created, that the soul, before it can ascend to a higher density or dimension, it has to experience certain things first. So too is the truth. Before you can even be a human, you have to experience other life forms that are in lower densities, because humanity in the third dimension, we get to experience everything and anything to learn all the lessons that we need to learn. Not everyone is going to be prepared to move beyond it, because some people love power and some people love the material world, because to them the material world defines them and gives them their ego. Like, the more money I have, the more valuable I don't know, technology I have and so forth, the better I am. And it's such a false way of looking at it, but that's part of the third dimension. So I was told, and it doesn't mean I'm correct, I'm just saying that my guides explained to me there will always be a third dimensional Earth that's considered a school. The fifth dimensional new Earth, which is a parallel Earth, was created to help those who have completed the third dimension to learn, to live, and to integrate amongst other races of beings throughout the universe. And then we move beyond that. And I've had conscious memory of being on the ships. I've had conscious memory of connecting with even masters such as those of the Great White Brotherhood. And it's very humbling when you experience that, because you realize that judgment does not need to be something that we do, because when we move beyond the third dimension, we don't need to judge one another. Judgment means that we feel we're better than another, and the truth is all of us have lessons to learn. Even as we move in higher densities or higher dimensions, higher frequencies, we still continue to learn. I mean, even when I worked with some of the masters, I was shocked to find out that there's so many different levels of mastery, and how beautiful those different levels are, and how gorgeous many of the different races of beings are. And I think, Miguel, you've also talked with, I think you've talked with one of the gentlemen that has been in our group that has experienced over 8,000 from other dimensions. and other universes that have come to him, and he draws pictures of them.
David, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, isn't it exciting, though, to think that there's so much more out there? Why do we have to limit ourselves? There's so much we get to experience, and there's no end to what we can experience. I love it.
Yeah, this is one of the interesting things about, this idea of disclosure. It's one of the questions that I put to everybody in the new book. And of course, because, we've had, because it's become an election issue somehow, at least for one candidate, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, they've been only had to say, what would amount to, 100 words, 200 words on it. It's become, that's, those few words have gone around the world. And it's very interesting to put to all these different people, 28 different people, what their take on disclosure is. And it's, I guess for some people, they can only see it in, their definition is just top down. Disclosure can only be an authority figure saying, yes, ETs are here, and I don't know what else. I don't know what else they would say. I mean, everybody has their own take on what that would be. I mean, some people say, well, there is no top-down disclosure that anybody could trust. I mean, we have established, I think beyond a reasonable doubt, that these people are professional liars. That's their whole thing. I mean, how politically naive do you have to be to imagine that political leaders are telling you the truth about almost anything, and they could justify it however they like. They could say it's national security, it's this or it's that, but generally it's about self-interest, isn't it? Fairly narrow self-interest. So, I remember Robert in the interviews for Meet the Hybrids. I still remember the way he said it when it came up. He said, "Well, if the government of the United States came forward and said, 'Here's ET,' I'd think, well, what ET is this? I mean, is this a real ET or one you created?" And he said, "Because I do know that's going on." So the idea that we could trust top-down disclosure, I just think is naive. I cannot imagine that something this profound, this absolutely central, something that threatens to finally kind of burst that kind of bubble that's kind of sealed planet Earth from the rest of reality all this time. I mean, if the government's holding the pin that burst that bubble, I mean, yeah, I just don't credit that. And then, because what are they really going to get up there and say? And where would the motivation come from? How would that be in anybody's interest, given that, I think of the kind of people who really pull the strings on this planet as, I term them the masters of the status quo. And the only interest they have is the maintenance of the status quo. I mean, if you look at climate change, for example, and you look at that as a clear and present danger to all of life on Earth, certainly the human race, and the fact that that's been routinely ignored, endlessly ignored, and people have made it their political project to prevent people even talking about it or taking it seriously. I mean, that tells you the level of pathology in that level of power, that their view is that the status quo must be maintained at all costs, even the ultimate cost. I mean, how crazy is that? So the idea that those kinds of people are going to just,
it's about a tour.
decide to kind of give this up, and share something of this sort with a real kind of relaxed attitude about it, let's say, and just say, well, we're just going to let the chips
Okay, Monty, don't interrupt, please. Please.
That's just bananas. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So it seems to me that it's in the hands of everybody who's interested in the subject in terms of simply sharing information, sharing experiences, and in a sense, I mean, who knows what that leads to? We don't know, and I'm not sure we really can know. I think all you can do is be driven by those impulses you have. And again, that may all be guidance. It may be a soul contract that was made prior to incarnation. There's so many different levels, different possibilities for what is playing out here. But who knows? I mean, even these people, even the elites, those guys, it could be that the three of us were hanging out with them back in the day and saying, well, we're going to put together a kind of material experience that we're all going to have, and it's going to be super intense, and a lot of people are going to have a very bad time, but we're all going to learn things. And Cynthia said, it is kind of a school down here. I mean, where I struggle to imagine a more challenging existence than being a human being at this particular time.
At this time. Well, it seems to me from our analysis, and I have to say that the bias of my particular brand of exopolitics, which is melded, it comes out of the conspiracy theory end of things, but we do false flag analysis, and it's very, very grounded. It's very, very empirical. And that is that the goal of the false flags, starting with Orlando and going to 9/11, going all this, is to defeat disclosure. And it's to defeat the hybrid's mission. It's to keep the largest percentage of souls in third density as possible, i.e., that there is a spiritual struggle going on, and that there's all kinds of theories. They say, oh, there are these evil 6th and 7th density souls, and the way they get their cosmic rocks off is by keeping lower souls really down there, and the devil keeps his souls ignorant, and they get
Please don't say
maximum.
anything they can hear anything you say, Monty.
I'm sorry?
Please stop it. This is on public radio.
I'm sorry? Oh, was there something going on, or? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Alfred.
Oh. So so what we're saying is that it seems like the very mission of the quote dark forces that manifest as the false flags at Orlando, etc., is to defeat disclosure, is to defeat the mission of the hybrids, which is to prepare humans for ascension. Would you like to comment on that, for example, Cynthia?
Yeah, and I agree with you, because that's one of the things that the dark wants, is to maintain control. And their greatest fear is what happens if humanity wakes up, if humanity realizes that their power, their power to change things is within them. And we don't have to be the victims. It's like we can change what happens, but we have to believe in it. And how do you teach people that it's important to be in their hearts and order what the changes they want to see happen? They have to be part of making it happen. They have to create that which they want, and they have to believe they have that ability.
So if you could advise us, how, say, can individuals like Miguel and myself that are public communicators in the exopolitical field, or any of the viewers, how should we spend our time at this crucial time? What should we be thinking about? What should we be communicating about? Should we be communicating about, vote for Remain, stop Leave, vote for X, don't vote for Y? Or what should we be doing with our time at this time? What would be your kind of, or should we be spending our time doing programs like this, focusing on more of the new Earth and not so much of the third density? What's your advice to us?
Well, when I first realized that I had a mission here, I was told that it was important when they said that there was a limited number that will ascend. I didn't understand that. And they said, for humanity to ascend, they must learn to be in their hearts. They must give up all judgment, prejudice, greed, and see the creator source within each and every being. What I feel we need to focus on is to get out of our egos and get into our hearts, and to stop seeing everybody as being different when we see that we're all connected, that we all are part of source selves. Then we begin honoring one another. We change by seeing that others have that ability to love unconditionally. And again, for all hybrids, the most shocking thing that happened to them when they came to Earth was when they discovered that they did not have unconditional love around them. Every single hybrid I've talked about, they said, I didn't know it was going to be this hard being on Earth. We got so used to loving one another without judging one another or being prejudiced, that when you come to Earth, it's like you're being slammed in the face with all of these judgments, prejudices, and fears. So humans need to give up fear and go into their hearts and see each other as equals. And that's the best we can do in order to change this world.
Right. Can people contact you for ongoing work? Is that something that you do, or what do you do? Do you do work in this area, or do you hold classes, or what is your line of work, if I could ask?
Well, first of all, I'm a sculptor, and secondly, and let me explain to you, I make beings that different universal beings, like, and Miguel is holding up the Nebulan Healer, and I make Andromedans, Arcturians, Pleiadians, also tall white satyrs, mantises. And the reason I make them is that the beings are so loving and want to help their family here on Earth that they actually will put an aspect of their soul into the sculptures through me, so that the people, the hybrids and the star seeds here on Earth, feel their star family with them. And they also help them to remember. They activate the DNA as needed for them to remember who they are and what their missions are. What I also do is I assist those people that have questions, that don't know, are they a star seed? Are they a hybrid? And they want to know who they really are and why certain things are happening. The other thing is I've had numerous people who have contacted me where they have had malevolent beings attack them. And so what I've done was I have taught them how to be in their power so that even the malevolent ones cannot control them, and that how to get rid of the malevolent ones. It's so important. But everything with being in their hearts with unconditional love, because again, the malevolent ones feed off of fear, anger, resentment, all the negative things that we humans can feed into, they feed off of.
Right. How can people who would like to get in touch with you, either for the sculptures or for some of your guidance work, how can they do that?
They can contact me through my email.
Mm-hmm.
My email address is ctcrawford1949 at gmail.com.
Okay.
I also have a website, which is etsculptors.com.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Miguel. Now we've touched on a lot of areas. What are your thoughts on the areas that we are touching here? Because you find yourself now doing this type of work, and at the same time having your concerns of leave, remain, all of these things as a participant in the body politic.
Mm-hmm.
How do you personally resolve all of that, knowing that the ultimate goal is graduation from these disturbed frequencies?
Mm.
So
Yeah, well,
how do
I'll
you
say
deal
this.
with all of that?
I'll say this, that my greatest impulse on that whole leave or remain, Britain leaving or remaining in the European Union thing, it's simple to me. I support unity. I believe very strongly that the most important thing that we can do is understand that we are completely, not somewhat, but absolutely interdependent on this planet. We are on a very small planet, and we have got to get along. We've got to figure this out. It's actually not that complicated, but I mean, for myself, I've got a slightly different perspective. I don't know how it is for quote unquote regular people that are born in a certain place, they're a certain nationality, they have a certain framework that they come into life with. They have a certain set of identities, that things that they are connected to. Whereas I was born in Rhodesia, which politically doesn't even exist anymore, to an English mother who'd grown up all over Southern Africa, and an Azorian Portuguese father who, as a teenager, had been sent to war in Africa. So I am a hybrid. In that respect, I live in a continent that I was not born in, but I can tell you this, from when I was tiny, and told about passports and so forth. I remember a conversation about passports. I was probably less than 3 years old, and it was like, well, what do we need that for? What's to go across borders if we want to go to another country? Well, what are borders? Well, they're kind of lines on. Oh, you can't see them, but they're kind of there on countries, between different countries, and you say that this place is now ended and this place is now beginning, and you've got to act differently and use different money and speak different languages. And I'm like, well, why? Why would you do that? We're born on a planet, right? I understood that we were born on a planet that's spinning through space. We're all on the same rock. So why are we putting so much time and effort into dividing ourselves? And it just weirded me out. I've never understood it. It's like something in my makeup, psychologically, on whatever level, I can't understand it. I cannot understand so much of human behavior. It's like people get out of bed in the morning and think, how do I make my life harder and everyone else's lives harder today? How would I do that? How can I behave towards other people on the road, in the office, in the supermarket, that makes things harder? What can I be petty about today? And I think so much of it, frankly, comes down to the fact that we are not very honest. We're just not very honest. We don't really seem to understand much about reality, about what we really are, how we really feel. We don't have an open dialogue about our emotions with other people. It's very tough. It's very different if you're talking to someone like Cynthia. When talking with someone like Cynthia, I feel like this is how exchange is meant to happen, in a really open and loving and just authentic way. Just say what's in your heart. Just say what's in your heart, and you can go anywhere you like, and it's okay. There's no judgment. That is radically different to almost any other human interaction you can think about. I started getting completely hooked on this subject when I was writing a novel about truth. And in that, every aspect of truth that I looked at in human society was basically the same thing. And over again, I was taught the lesson that humans have a fundamental problem with truth. And if you think about a lot of the problems that we have today, it's because you get certain folks who decide that they are the arbiters of truth, whether it's dictators, whether it is political parties. Again, this touches on so many of the things that we've talked about today in terms of world events, where people are saying, this is the truth. And I think anybody who comes up with the truth is, it's okay for me to kill. The truth is, it's okay. I can justify screwing over that guy or that group or whatever. I think basically you've got it wrong. I hate to be, judgmental and myself, decide to be the arbiter, but it's just what is in my heart. I just don't think it makes any kind of sense to make other people's lives harder. I don't think that's why we're here. I think that ultimately, you could say, well, this is all a kind of pantomime. We're here just to act out stuff. But it just, I don't know, it just doesn't, like I said, it feels very, very real. And it feels like it actually counts that we try and get this right. And it's not just because of humanity. My dad was always, very much a nature lover, hooked on wildlife documentaries. So we always had Wildlife on One, David Attenborough, every David Attenborough series. And And to this day, when I watch one of those incredible documentaries that the BBC has done so well, decades, I'm just knocked out by how many incredible beings that we share this world with. And it has always confused me, really, that humans feel that they have any right whatsoever to imperil the lives of animals, of any other species. Like, that lack of basic respect for other types of life is just baffling to me.
Right. Well, I'm thinking that we're coming to the end of this segment, but I hope that we will have programs and roundtables like this in the future, because I think that hybrids are a tremendous resource for us, the human race, and that the more that hybrids are given a platform to share their wisdom and their insight with us, the more we humans will benefit. So I hope that you will be able to come and join us in the future, Cynthia and Miguel, and perhaps more of your hybrid colleagues. I'm just wondering if perhaps there are insights that you haven't had a chance to talk about yet, Cynthia, perhaps some insights that you'd like to leave our audience with about the role of hybrids, or what our audience as individuals should think about at this crucial time.
Well, there's so much really, but I would have to say, as long as humans take from this the importance of being in their heart. In fact, I have to say that before I could completely awaken and remember my mission, my guides and my star family told me I had to get into my heart to find my truth, for our true connection to the source is through our hearts. So let's start there.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Miguel, likewise, are there any things that you haven't had a chance to share with yet on the program about your journey now with the hybrids that you would like to say?
Well, we could easily go another 2 hours, easily. I mean, there are so many aspects to this, but I think that what I really want to leave people with is the understanding that this is not, there's nothing exclusive about this. This is not something that you can only participate in if you have a certain genetic profile. If you have any kind of consciousness whatsoever, you can participate, you can interact, because you're already doing it. You're already doing it. It is available. It's simply, it's not an ideology in terms of here's a bunch of stuff that you have to do and this is what you have to give up. And it's not a cult, it's not a religion. I see it as a kind of cosmic Buddhism. Buddhism is a pretty cosmic religion. It is about transcendence in so many ways. It is about being loving, being I think simply open-hearted and open-minded. And I think you could say that it is very, very tough, and we touched on this, that there are many, many forces in this world that make it pretty tough to be open-hearted and open-minded. You know, there are lots of people who take advantage of that. But in a sense, I think that it's up to all of us to, you know, there's that famous phrase, Gandhi, I believe, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. I think it's that. I think that that's a decision that I made. That's part of what set me on the path to do this book. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine, David Saunders, wonderful guy, and we met through the environmental movement in Bristol, where I live. And David and I were discussing the state of the world and sustainability and the human future and so forth. And I was in such a dark place with it all that it just came tumbling out of me. I could not help myself just giving him this litany, this full kind of analysis of why I think it's way too late and there is no coming back from this, you know. That we're in a death spiral, all of that. And David is the most relentlessly positive human I think I ever met. And yet by the end of that, he was really visibly upset. And by, you know, when we got off that call, I just thought, what am I doing? What am I doing? If I believe a single thing that I say about what this world needs, I must put that into the world. I can't put that negativity out into the world to squash and upset people like David and say, no, what you're doing is a waste of time. That's crazy. I have got to turn that on its head. I've got to say, no, I am going to stand up for what I believe. I am not going to give in. I'm not going to do that. I am going to turn my will towards putting as much goodness and positivity and love into this world. Even if it's just a little bit, it makes a difference. And who knows what that will lead to. And it's amazed me, the comments that come back from people who read Meet the Hybrids. I mean, it's incredibly touching. It's very humbling. It's incredibly soul satisfying to know that what we set out to achieve in this book, really trying to focus as much as we could on, you know, what are the key messages that are coming out of this whole thing. Let's not get obsessed with ETs. It's not about form. That's not what this is about. It is about what is animating that form. It's about what does somebody do with that form. And the fact that is coming back to us over and over again from people, that is touching them, that they are feeling so inspired by what they're reading. I mean, you know, that satisfies that whole kind of soul level desire I had to put positivity into the world. And I know that I speak for everybody in the book when I say that.
Well, thank you. And thank you both. I think that I can say as one reader, but I believe that you've both opened a portal here and you've anchored something in this density, and you've anchored the fifth world in this density here. So this is really powerful, and I just cannot recommend more to people this book, and more importantly, this whole process and the reality of the frequencies that you've brought here. You've really opened up and you've changed the third density. Maybe that's what Ascension is. It's kind of an alchemical process.
Yeah, maybe.
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you both for taking time out today to be here. As I said, I'm very serious that I hope that in the future, as the events develop, we can create more of these programs, because I think that the energy that you and your colleagues bring is very special, and is a gift to all of us here. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Alfred, and I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this experience and these ideas with people and these energies. I hope it's meaningful for them.
I'll be up in 1 minute.
Wonderful. Okay then.
Thank you again, Alfred. I really appreciate this. I'm very honored.
Okay.